Hello, welcome to the Job Walk Podcast, an interview-styled mobile podcast where we go out into the field where the professionals are and share helpful information on buying, selling, remodeling, designing, or building your home. So join us for a job walk. All right, we're here today with Brent Reid with Window Visions in Solana Beach. We're going to be talking about large window door openings, and Brent's going to tell us what we actually call those. But first, Brent, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
I'm Brent Reid, and I've been kind of involved with windows and doors for the last 20 years. Started in installation, installed a lot of Andersen products, got my license, and got into finish work, interior doors. So I've done the interior side, exterior side, and then really got heavily into the specialty door stuff that we're going to talk about, and exterior door and window installs. So I did that for about 10 years, ran my own crew, and then moved over to the sales side. So kind of shut down the install business, went and worked for I helped open up a local dealership, started one in San Diego, Associated Building Supply, and then went to Western manufacturer for about 3 years, and then came over to, now I'm at Window Visions, and just all sales, service, delivery, kind of full sales organization for doors and windows.
That's great. So you have a lot of big background to pull on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these big door openings. I call them about 10 different things. So sometimes I call them bifolds. Sometimes I call them lift and slides. Sometimes I call them accordion doors. What is the right terminology for somebody to use when they're looking for these types of openings?
So there, we would categorize it as a specialty door.
Okay.
So you've got the standard sliders, which is a 2-panel, a 4-panel slider, which 15 years ago, there were a couple companies doing bifolds, which is really a folding door. So bifold gets confusing because is it two? But really they're pivoting in the middle and they're folding doors. You've got the lift and slides and the multi-slides. So, and then maybe some other vertical lifting doors or windows as well. But any of that's in the specialty door category. But most people, when they're coming to ask for a specialty door, they're going to specifically say whether they want a folding lift and slide. Is a little confusing. We use a lot less lift and slides at this point than multi-slides. But that was different 10 years ago as well. We were doing a lot because of the big panels and the roller systems and assemblies. We were doing a lot more lift and slides.
So let's go back to what you first said. Sort of the standard sliding glass door is a 2-panel and a 4-panel, you said, right? So can you kind of describe what you're talking about?
Yeah. So a 2-panel, really, when you go with a traditional sliding door, it's an extruded or a track that's been that's set up for two tracks. You've got fixed doors, and then you have a sliding section where you can roll those doors on that track. They're easier to make than like a modular system where you can add track after track, and it's usually limited to size of panels, right? So you're going to have max widths. It's going to be more limited, but really you're dealing with 2 tracks. You've got fixed units on the side, and then you've got a sliding door behind it. So that's why you can do what we would say an OXXO, which is a biparting sliding door, or a 2-panel, which is just 2 doors where you have an XO or an OX sliding.
All right. So just for everybody to know, the X and the O refers to, I know it refers one to each panel. Which is which? The X is the stationary or the opening?
Sadly, our industry made the X the opening
Okay.
The operable. So you'd think it'd be the O, but it's the X is the operable window. Oh, on window or door.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's great to know. Okay, so basically what we're saying, sort of the standard sliding door is standard because of the track system. Is that right?
Yeah. And limited sizes. So it used to be like 6 foot wide, 5 foot wide by 6'8" or 80 inches tall. 96 started coming into play with taller doors, but there were just standard sliding doors with limited sizes. So you got like a 3 foot panel. As the specialty door stuff and multi slides came into play, the roller assemblies to hold those panels got bigger. We've adapted to where those sliding doors usually have the same rolling assemblies a lot of times now as the multi slide. So we can do bigger, we can sometimes do 24 foot standard sliders, which can be a huge cost savings compared to doing a multi slide. That's really like one spot we value engineer a lot in projects.
So let's talk about, so it sounds like one of the big things that create the difference in the different systems is the tracks.
Correct.
Is that what we should start with as we go into this discussion, or should we talk about the way the doors open, or what would you suggest in terms of?
So really, it's a good place to start because you've got the track assembly, and a lot of the door panels are the same from the manufacturers. The standard sliders are the same as the multi slides. It's just that the market, you can get more for a multi slide. So that it is really a good place, depending on what the configuration is, to save some money. Like changing a multi slide to a slider, even if it's specified on the plan, and changing, we're going to save a lot of money there. But overall, the panels are the same. So, but they just don't have to connect the tracks, and there's not as much design involved in doing a multi-slide where you can stack, 5 or 6 panels each way.
And those can also be recessed into a wall cavity, correct? That's one of the things people probably specify that they like, right?
Yeah, so getting them to disappear into a wall became a big deal, and so you can do pocket or non-pocket. If you have the wall space and the square footage to put a pocket in, then it's a cool detail. But overall, it's really about stacking. That's where the multi-slides came into play. And before multi-slides were around, it was really a lot more, how it started was the lift and slides. Specialty companies, it was very expensive because of a lot of the European hardware that they were using and importing and then making panels here, modifying their panels to fit these 6 foot wide by 10 foot tall panels that, going to the basics, they lift, the roller assembly actually lifts the panel up off of the weather stripping. The weather stripping would sit on the finished floor. You lift the handle, it lifts, gets the weather stripping out of the way, and you can slide it. It's a smooth sliding door. From there, just to be cost effective, they got away with the hardware that would lift and slide the door,
Right.
and they went to multi slides. So harder to seal. And a lot of those lift and slides were flush. That's where you see that flush interior exterior application, because they're actually sealing on the finished floor. Where the lift and slides need to have, you can do flush floors, but they're more susceptible to leaks.
Okay.
So that's where you do like those, the sills have a dam on the back. Less weather stripping because they don't lift off the weather stripping, so it's going to slide against the weather stripping.
Probably a little bit less parts to have problems with.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good point with specialty doors is the more or mechanical and more parts that move. You look at folding doors, the roller assemblies, even a lift and slide, it's a lot of gears and a lot of things to break and a lot of weight.
Right.
So the more simple the door system is in a specialty door, the longer it's going to last.
So the multi-slide eliminates the lift, right? But still functions for the most part the same, correct?
Yeah, it's going to roll. It's going to be harder depending on how, you get into weather ratings, and depending on how much weather stripping you put in it. So the better it seals, the worse it functions. Just
In terms of opening and closing.
opening and closing, like that's just all specialty doors. The better or windows in general, the more weather stripping, the better the water infiltration ratings are, the worse it's going to function for the most part.
That's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off.
And is that the higher, so just keeping with the doors, so is the higher functioning weather performance cost more, or is it?
Most of the time, like when you get into hurricane rated, when they've been engineered, just the market's going to dictate, like you're going to get more money for those products. Pretty much most manufacturers they either specialize in that and they charge for it because there's less people in the market.
Right.
Or they have a lower grade and then upgrade into these hurricane rated or high weather rated. Triple glaze is a good example.
Right.
You're going to pay more for a triple glaze. So as you upgrade weather stripping and glass specs, impact glass, then you're going to end up paying
There's
more.
a cost for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the lift and slide and the multi-slide, we can talk about those in one category now that we know the difference, right? We can kind of talk about them. So on those, you have multiple tracks, correct?
On the multi-slide.
On the multi-slide.
Yep.
So you're getting wider and wider the more panels that you have, correct?
Yes.
Is that seen as a challenge, or is that just people accept it and they're fine with it?
Most people with lift and slides, or let's just categorize them as like a multi-slide lift and slide. The sliding doors, but either way, you're adding 2 to 3 inches per track. Like the minimum is 2 inches. That's the smallest really that I have. The wall depths. So if you have a 4 panel minimum, you're gonna have an 8-inch jamb. Most jambs are, like if you're going into an older home that has 2x4, you're actually gonna have to frame in.
So you're gonna have a thickened wall, yeah.
You're gonna have an 8-inch wall, so that can be an issue. A lot of times we're going into new construction, or at least in my world, we're doing new construction and we're specifying what wall that depth that is, and making it happen on site.
And then what are the panel sizes? At what point do you recommend to somebody, if they're designing a house or maybe they're remodeling a space and they're going to buy a new specialty door, or maybe they're considering a regular, more traditional slider, do you recommend them to sort of start investigating the lift and slide, or at what size do you say, you really should probably be looking at one of these specialty doors as opposed to a traditional kind of sliding door, single track system?
Really, I have most of the people that come in asking for changing their home with a door, they are already on the internet looking at different stuff that they like. So they usually come in looking for a multi-slide or a folding door.
For like a 12-foot opening, 10-foot opening, I mean...
It's all over the place. And
Okay.
So that's where I really look at what they're actually getting, where I switch from a multi-slide or a bifold. So like a 10-foot multi-slide with 3 panels, you're getting maybe, let's say you're getting about 6.5 feet with that size of opening. I go, why don't we do a 2-panel slider? You're getting 5, and we saved half the money.
Right.
So you don't have a lot of value in that 10-foot multi-slide,
Right.
for the cost. And then all of a sudden a bifold, you get a full 10-foot opening. You're using 3 panels, but you're opening every single door.
Right.
And we'll stay off the bifold for a little
Right.
bit. But even let's say a 20-foot opening, you go, okay, we can have a 4-panel and get about 15 feet of opening, and you get a wider panel with that multi-slide. So that's the same scenario with a biparting standard slider, where I go, you can have 10 feet, we can open 2 panels in the middle, and again, cost savings. Or if 10 foot's not enough and that extra 5 feet is important to get 15 feet of opening, that's where we go to the multi-slide.
Okay, so it's really better for the bigger openings.
Really, I'm trying to keep bifolds small because back to the function and service. I've seen a lot of service on bifolds over 15 foot.
Okay.
So really, bifolds are maximizing openings 15 foot and under.
Okay.
And then from there, I'm really looking at multi-slides to get more glass. The other part of it is looking at the view and how much you're going to open it, because you're getting smaller panels with bifolds, larger panels with the multi-slides.
So that's the thing that makes the biggest difference is just the opening. So what's the biggest opening you've ever done with a specialty door?
It's in the 40-foot range.
Holy cow.
And a lot of times that's like a corner, 0-post corner situation, a lot of steel involved. But you can do 40 to 50 feet. It's a lot. It's probably more than most people need or use.
And then how big was the jam on something like that? Then it's getting pretty thick.
Yeah, it's gonna be like, it dependent if we're biparting, right? So we're
Right.
coming from the middle.
Right.
It keeps it smaller. So if we can move doors each direction, it keeps it smaller. So
Cuts
that's
it in half, really, from doing it. Right?
absolutely. So, really, you don't want to look at more than 12 inches of track, right? So,
Right.
so when you get into the 5 or 6 panels, it's a lot of track.
And then we'll finish up on these types of windows. What are the standard sizes? So if somebody's looking to buy a door and they don't want to have it custom made, but they're kind of looking at design wise and they want to maximize their dollar by staying with a standard size. What are some of the standard sizes, width and height for a multi-slide kind of door? Or is there such a thing?
So the key they're really, with the specialty door stuff, it's a lot of custom windows and door manufacturers. They don't have a lot of standard sizes. The key is staying within the standard glass sizes when you're going to oversized glass. They really want, there's like price jumps with the manufacturers of 50 square feet, 60 square feet, and then from 60, you're kind of in that. There's another point of like 96 square feet where you're jumping into jumbo glass, and there's a huge cost increase. So just staying into the parameters of what, and watching those costs between, even going over 8 feet, it could be 8'2", and you could see a price jump just because it's over 8 foot.
Okay.
So that's the only thing from pricing perspective is just watching where the exponential jump happens. So and I know they really like to stay for handling, for getting the glass from the glass supplier. 50, 60, and 96 square feet is a pretty common price jump.
Okay, that's really helpful. So then let's move over to the bifolds. So we already talked a little bit about those. You like to use those on smaller openings under 15 feet. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And so the bifolds, because they are folding like an accordion, those panels are smaller.
Correct.
Right? So let's talk a little bit about the panel sizes that bifolds come in.
Yeah. So really there's the main manufacturer of the hardware specifies what you can hang a door off of, right? So it's the hinges and the rollers that is made. It's a pretty much an industry standard. There's a couple of them. There's Brio, and there's Centaur that's doing probably 80% of the bifolds at this point. And then there's some specialty European hardware and some other functioning hardware, but the majority of the hardware is Centaur hardware. So all the major manufacturers are buying that, hanging doors off of that, their door panels.
And the glass pretty much comes from one place as well, correct? For the most part?
For the most part, everyone's gone to Cardinal. Cardinal's, they're the scientists of the glass for the manufacturers. So, through different failures of laying up their own glass through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, having glass failures, the cost and the efficiency of using Cardinal has become, everybody's using it.
So really the things that make them different then is the frames, I guess, the material, and then the manufacturing of those frames.
Yeah, fit and finish.
The hardware is the same. The glass is pretty much the same.
Correct. So you've got Truth Hardware doing and Interlock, who are doing, they're all components, and the manufacturers are finding the best one and these guys have kind of become the guys. So it's really materials, whether they're aluminum, they're clad, how they're put together, fit and finish, quality, service.
Which there's a ton to talk about in all those categories.
Yeah.
But back to the bifolds. So the panel sizes are what, 3 foot and 4 foot?
So 39 inches is the max width on a panel at this point for the standard hardware. The other side of it is your styles or your panels are actually meeting together. So your sight line or glass to glass you're going to lose more glass on a bifold. You're going to lose about 7 inches between each panel. And then where a multi-slide, they're interlocking and kind of crossing over themselves.
Right.
So you're going to be down to, in the 2 to 3.5 inch range.
Is the weather performance better on the bifolds than on a lift and slide because they're more weather stripping on them?
I would say depending on the sills that you use, but I would say absolutely you're going to get you're probably going to get better ratings on a bifold than a multi-slide. You could look at the DP ratings. Depends on the manufacturers too, right?
So
how they're doing it.
The bifolds, the look is completely different, right? Because if you're, I guess depending on the size of the opening, but you're going to have more vertical division in your glass, whereas with the multi-slides, it's going to give you're going to have just more glass.
You could do either. Mm-hmm. So you could have a vertical looking door system with narrower styles, but most of the time with the multi-slide, we're doing wide panels. Architecturally, it's going to look more square and wide with a multi-slide, and then the bifolds are going to look more vertical. So the way I look at it, I go, or when I'm working with a client, if I'm at their place and I look around, I see every window and door is closed. They got the AC on. I go, but they want this giant door system. I go, this is how you live. Right. And ask a few questions, but really it's they're going to have it closed most of the time, and they might have a killer ocean view, and so I'm leaning towards a multi-slide with wider panels
for more
better
glass.
View.
Yeah.
If I walk in and it's completely open and they live open, we might lean towards the open air is more important, and we might go to a bifold. So it just depends how you live.
So on the bifold, the operation of it, the opening and closing is different, right? Because you can have a separate door. What do you call that door that opens?
Man door or daily door.
The daily door.
Yeah.
Where with the multi-slide, you just slide one panel over. Is that right?
Yeah, you really grab one panel and you pull all the other panels. So I would say weight of the panels can be factored in. but ease of use, a sliding door is going to be way easier to use than a folding door.
And then let's talk about the weight a little bit. So all of the multi-slide type doors, the weight's going to be carried on the bottom, correct?
For the most part, yeah.
But with the bifold doors, sometimes the weight, they're hanging, correct?
They have both, but I would say every door in the last 6-7 years I've sold in a bifold is top hung. So it's
Okay.
hanging.
And what's the benefit of the top hanging door versus the support?
I think there's more function in a bifold, and so having those rollers, the carriers and the rollers up in the head out of the dirt is better. Where a sliding door, there's really 2 to 4 rollers rolling on a very thin track, and so the dirt isn't as much of an issue. Plus, you're doing larger panels, so having it rolling on the bottom for the weight and not pulling down gravity is better.
And then structurally, if you're going to go with a bifold system, should you talk to your structural engineer about that extra weight that's going to be potentially hanging off of that header?
I would factor it in. That's probably the largest service. That's why I like to do smaller folding doors. Is long term, that's going to load on the header, and it wants to pull down. Mm-hmm. So in the future, there's going to be a lot of folding doors that have settled between the header and just the door movement. And there's going to be a lot of service, especially on really large, wide doors.
So we're going to wrap up here, but let's talk a little bit about that service so this sort of door phenomenon that's been going on for, I don't know what the last 15 years.
Yeah.
But gotten very popular in the last probably 5 years,
sure.
Right? Where everybody's looking at
it.
Yeah. Are you seeing callbacks or on a specific door over another door or a different system toward another system? Or, if people keep it closed all the time, I guess it's not. But if you're using it on a daily basis, were they designed for everyday opening and closing 3 or 4 times a day? Or were they designed more to just be opened on special occasions? Do you know, or do you have a sense of that?
So I would say when they first started coming out, when they first started coming out, I saw a lot of service. That may have been, I think a lot of it was install based. Like the guys didn't know tricks of making them last longer in the field, like cambering the head and giving a little bit more room and tolerance. So tolerance is a big thing on bifolds or multi-slides. When we have settling, that's what's going to be able to give you room to adjust the door. So do I see less service now because I think I just don't see a ton of service down the road. I don't have a lot of callbacks, 5-10 years down the road. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I think people have gotten better at installing them. I think the manufacturers have gotten better at building them. And so less service than there was.
Well, that's good.
Early on.
That's good news. So I just want to make one final point, and then I'll ask you for your information. How people can contact you on the installation. That is typically somebody that just does these kind of installations pretty much as their career for the most part, right? It's kind of a specialized process and installation techniques that go along with it. You're not really going to have your regular contractor installing it or sort of a more standard window person. I mean, it's really and I think the manufacturers offer training on installation typically.
Yeah, at this point, if someone is wondering how to put a specialty door in, you don't want to go that route. I mean,
it's not a DIY project.
It's not. There's a lot of you just need to be specifically trained on the type of manufacturer you're putting in. So there's less of that. Most of the builders have figured out you're paying so much for the door anyways. Pay the extra amount to have it put in right. So I think that's happening more and more. But no, the standard general contractor, there's some good ones that are finished carpenters that can probably put it in as well. But the time of learning it, these guys are so efficient at the specialty install that they do every day that it's worthwhile.
And I can imagine, I've been part of some of the smaller openings like we talked about. And it takes almost a day to do one of those. So I can't imagine one of these big, 30, 40-foot openings must take a few days, if not a week, to install that type of project.
Yeah, it takes a few days. A lot of it is setup and prep, right? Putting the right waterproofing down, sill pans, but prepping correctly, and then and then manpower on the really big panels, or lifts or cranes, depending on how big they are. But a lot of it's set up too, like what you can get done in one day, no matter what, right? A small door kind of takes the same amount as a door double the size.
Right.
So it just depends what it is, if it's a corner unit. But yeah, they can take up to a few days.
All right. Well, we might have to have a whole nother segment on installation, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But we're going to wrap up for today with Brent from Window Vision. So, Brent, if you just want to share how people can get in touch with you, and I know you guys have a great showroom here.
Yeah, so we have a Window Visions. You can look us up online, windowvisionsinc.com, or I'm at Brent at windowvisionsinc.com. And then we're in Solana Beach, in Southern California. So
Great.
yeah,
Thanks, Brent.
thank you.